not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised.
We are back. We are back. What's happening, America? Dr. Wilmer Leon here. You're going inside the issues. Sirius XM 126 Urban View. And this is post-election analysis. As you all know, this past Tuesday, America selected the electors for its 45th president, Donald Trump. A lot of people are very surprised. Many are disgusted to the point of protest. How did this happen? Before the election, the polls had Hillary Clinton ahead. Many thought that Tuesday evening was going to be a very, very quick night. Well, before the election, we had with us BBC investigative journalist and Rolling Stone investigative journalist Greg Palast, producer of the movie The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. He talked about the CrossCheck program and how the CrossCheck program would be used to knock eligible voters off the rolls, and how the CrossCheck program would be used to bring the election to the Republicans and to Donald Trump. We're now joined by Greg Palast to talk about how the CrossCheck program was used. Greg, you believe that this election was stolen, correct?
Well, I'm not sure I believe it, but that's the facts. The facts, ma'am. I'm still not sure I believe it. And, you know, you saw my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. There's my ad.
Yes.
A Tale of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. And I thought, you know, I really thought I had destroyed my career. I thought I just predicted how I said this is how Donald Trump is going to steal the election and win and get keep his GOP Senate for his billionaire buddies. And I thought, well, I'm doomed. Hillary's walking in, and they're going to say, oh, Greg Palast, that's the guy who said Trump's going to win and did a movie about it.
Right.
I'm laughing, but, you know, it's kind of frightening. You know, what? It was a prediction I wasn't happy about, as you know. So, but here's the facts, ma'am. There's a system called, this is the first return to apartheid Jim Crow election. That is the first presidential election after the gutting of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 50 years after Martin Luther King led people over that bridge in Selma and won the Voting Rights Act. It was, you know, taken apart, and you have states that just went completely wild. Those, especially those under the so-called pre-clearance provisions. And one of the things that they did is that they got together Trump's functionary, a guy named Chris Kobach, Secretary of State of Kansas, on the Trump transition team now, who the chief voting official of Kansas said, who cares about Kansas? The answer is he got the other 29 GOP Republican secretaries of state, those little Catherine Harrises, to turn over their entire voter rolls. And he went through the voter rolls looking for people who voted twice. People like James Brown, people like Michael Jackson. The entire Jackson 5 and 25,000 are on his list. And he came up with a list of 7.2 million Americans voting twice. 7.2 million. Now, understand, you vote twice, you go to prison for 5 years if they catch you, and it's pretty easy to catch you. In fact, Kobach, the guy who put together it, said, oh, it's really easy to catch people if they vote twice and go arrest them. Yes, it is, because you have their names, you have their addresses, you have the last four numbers of their Social Security number, you have in states like North Carolina, they have your email. So here's some of the facts. Here's the facts, ma'am. The Trump victory margin in Michigan is 13,000. The CrossCheck purge list, if you get your name on this list, they take off a hunk of the people on this list. The victory margin was 13,000 in that swing state, but the purge list was 449,000. Now, would it matter if it's just a bunch of random people being removed? One, we don't want double voters, but number one, they haven't arrested anyone. People committing a felony crime, and I talked to these GOP officials, including Chris Kobach. And by the way, Kobach, if you're wondering, I throw that name out. He's more important than you think. He's the guy who told Donald Trump to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. He's the guy that wrote the driving while brown law, as it's called by the ACLU, the vicious racist law called, which is SB 1070 in Arizona. He's a busy little man. And he came up with this blacklist. And when I say blacklist, I mean blacklist. What I mean by that is they wouldn't give anyone the list. They said, you commit the crime of double voting, now it's a criminal case, and therefore we can't turn over who these suspects are. But I got my hands on the list anyway, because that's what I do. If you know Greg Palast, I'm an investigative reporter, and this is, say confidential, it's the first thing I go for. It took about 5 months. We got the list. And we then, two things we had analyzed. Number one, how accurate is it? And let me read you a few of the names. Michael Eugene Jackson Sr. Senior. This is on my website at gregpalast.com. Michael Jackson voted in Georgia and Virginia many times. Once is Michael Eugene Jackson in Georgia, and then that same voter voted as Michael LeBurn Jackson in Virginia. Then a Michael Leonard Jackson voted in Georgia, but he voted again as Michael Page Jackson. Michael Jerome Jackson voted as Michael Eugene Jackson. This is on my website. This is straight from the list. The names, middle names, in 2 million cases, the middle names didn't match. 2 million cases, the middle names didn't match. Hundreds of thousands of juniors and seniors matched. There were 288 people named James Brown in Georgia who supposedly voted a second time in another state, committed that felony crime, and they know that because they found believe it or not, they found the name James Brown on other voter rolls. Obviously, it's the same person. Now, I know what you're going to say, Wilmer. You got a PhD, and you're going to say that's obviously just common names. These aren't double voters. These are just people with common names, different middle names. No. They're not common names for Republicans. That's the trick. Maria Hernandez, the most, names like Garcia. We had experts in the film. You have that expert, Mark Swedland. He does the databases for Amazon and eBay, so he knows his databases. He said 1 in 6 voters of color in the 30 Republican states, including those swing states that Trump won, 1 in 6 voters of color are on this list of double voters. And he said, that's flabbergasting. That's astonishing, especially these are people committing a felony crime, and they haven't arrested any because they say that they said two things. Well, they said to me they can't find them. And I find them very readily because I got the list, and they have their names and addresses, and I knocked on their doors. Like you'll see a gentleman in the film that you saw, Donald Alexander Webster. Donald Webster is his name. They said he voted as a second time, once in Ohio and once in Virginia. Well, I met him. Donald Alexander Webster Jr. is accused, and he supposedly voted in another state as Donald Eugene Webster Sr., and he said the obvious, that ain't me. That ain't me. And, and now we turned over to the state his name, and by the way, we gave the state his name and address. There's the criminal. If he's committed a crime, I don't want to give him any cover. Go and arrest him. They wouldn't, because he isn't a criminal. He's guilty of voting while black. Once again, see, the trick is that common names in America are the result. The African Americans share names quite a bit. That's an artifact of slavery.
Well, in fact, you mentioned you have statistics in the movie, and I may be slightly off on my numbers, but I'm not that far off. That 93% of people named Jefferson in this country are black, and 97% of people named Washington in this country are black.
I have to look back at those numbers, but that sounds about right. In fact, here's the deal. You can look it up yourself. It's in the Census Bureau. We worked with the Census Bureau on this. The Census Bureau keeps a racial breakdown of every surname in America.
Mm-hmm.
So Wilmer Leon, you're not going to be on the list. There's very few. Okay.
Not in my family. There are a lot of us.
Well,
there are a lot of Wilmer Leons in my
you
family.
Still be on the list as junior, senior.
Right.
Okay. But like names as Chris Kobach is not on the list. It's an unusual name. These German
Right.
white names are very tend to be very mixed up. So that you have David Koch, Charles Koch. I couldn't find two David Kochs in the country, by the way.
Let me go back.
One.
Let me go back to Michigan because I'm looking at Real Clear Politics, and they have Clinton 47.3%, Trump 47.6%. So Donald, and you I think you said three. How many votes did Trump win Michigan by?
13,000.
13,000. They knocked off. They knocked off 400,000. Was that right in Michigan?
Well, the purge list was 449,000, but it looks like they knocked off about 60,000 votes. It's about
okay.
5 times Trump's margin.
Okay.
And remember, it's overwhelmingly voters of color. And I would call this it's a Jim Crow tactic, but I'm not going to say it's racist. They say, well, how can you use a Jim Crow tactic and not be racist? The answer is these guys don't care about the color of your skin. This isn't the old rednecks clans.
These aren't your daddy's rednecks.
Yeah, not your daddy's racist. These are sophisticated cats who care about the color of your vote. Black people, Latinos, and now Asian Americans who used to vote Republican vote, as I say in the film, as if they've turned black.
Right.
And in the film, we have Korean kids who are dancing Gangnam Style, and then pop, they turn into John Lewis dancing Gangnam Style. The only film you're going to see
that was funny
with
John Lewis dancing
Gangnam Style. But it's like so several times the list in Arizona, same thing. What's happening in Arizona are the Hispanic names, where again the history of colonialism in Latin America meant that the conquistadors gave their names to impose their names on the population there, and so you have Hernandez, Cortez, Rodriguez, Garcia, and it's while you're talking about the percentage of black people named, the percentage of Jacksons named who are African American, the percentage of Garcias who are Hispanic is 96%. So I'm always interested. Who's the other 4%?
They're probably Filipino.
Yeah,
they're probably Filipino.
Yeah, because it's Asian American. In fact, actually, the Filipino. Again, you're absolutely right about that. We have a big hit against the Asian Americans who are voting as if they turn black, and that's in the film. Now, of course, in the film, in The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, we make it, at least the first hour of it, very funny, because I didn't want people to go to sleep or have this be, there's so many statistics and things. We have a cartoon about Katherine Harris knocking off black folks off the voter rolls in 2000. I make it so that you laugh till you're sick about laughing. But the idea is that I wanted you to get this information. But what we have now in Arizona, if you saw, they had that whole prison that they set up to catch the illegal alien voters, and they didn't mean aliens from Mars. And what they did was that prison is empty, but it doesn't stop them from taking people off the voter rolls. And here's the trick, Wilmer. Here's how you know it was a phony. In the film, and I'm telling you what you already know because you've seen the film. And by the way, I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, very much, very, very much. Yeah. Let me do this.
Way, it's on Amazon these days, and not in theaters. We did our theater run, but we're trying to make it. We pushed it to be available immediately on Amazon for obvious reasons. So it's a couple bucks, but The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Go to gregpals.com for the info. But also my article summary of what Trump did. But it's in the movie, assuming what he would do. But the real trick is that they didn't arrest anyone.
Right.
There's Donald Alexander Webster. Here he is. Here's his. They have on the CrossCheck. The reason I found him, because he does have a common name, is we have his address. We knocked on his door. Literally, we knocked on his door. It said, "And Mr. Webster, you voted twice. We got to talk to you. Would you appear on camera?" A lot of people, as you know, wouldn't appear on camera because they are. When believe it or not, when black folk are accused of committing a felony crime, a lot of them don't want to go on camera to talk about.
What a surprise!
But he was incensed because what they in my books, in the book The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, which is we have a sequel out of that name. I go into the story about how the federal prosecutor, David Iglesias, was told, he was a Republican, told by the White House to go out and arrest some Hispanic people in New Mexico for voting twice. And he said, yeah, but there's no evidence. They're not guilty. And they said, well, make a couple arrests, then you can let them go after the election. This was back when Bush was in.
Mm-hmm.
Because they tried this trick before, not using this cool CrossCheck method. This is quite sophisticated. They just thought that they'd create some hysteria. And they literally wanted to arrest people. So there's a good reason why a lot of people wouldn't go on camera, because they could arrest you just to make a show of it. Say,
right.
oh, thank you for finding Mr. Webster. It's like, uh-oh. But, but he was incensed to be told that he was voting twice with a different middle name, a guy who's senior, not junior, et cetera. And he's basically committing the crime of voting while black. This is a Jim Crow election with a Jim Crow result, except instead of using white sheets, it's the new Klux Klan, as I call it.
It's spreadsheets.
They use spreadsheets.
Let me do this. Let me stop you. Let me stop you there, because I need to take a break. It's 19 past the hour. When we come back, I want to talk about North Carolina. Clinton got 46.7%. Again, this is from Real Clear Politics. Clinton got 46.7%. Trump got 50.5%. But early on on Tuesday, they were already saying there were problems with the laptops at the precincts in North Carolina. They were coming in, the laptops, the computers were preloaded with old data. So people were already being told they had voted twice. That sounded to me like CrossCheck. So let's talk about North Carolina when we come back. We're now at 20 past the hour. Greg Palast is my guest. The Best Democracy Money Can Buy is the film. You can find it on Amazon. Greg's telling you that the election was stolen, and he's giving you the evidence to support that position. Keep it locked right here. Sirius XM 126 Urban View.
The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth.
23 past the hour. Dr. Wilmer Leon here, going inside the issues here. Sirius XM 126 Urban View. And Greg Palast is my guest, Palast. Go to gregpalast.com, gregpalast.com. You can get more information about the film The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. It is Greg's contention that the election was stolen, that Republicans used a program called CrossCheck, in which they matched names of people across the country. Basically, 29 states accused people with similar names of voting twice, then remove those people from the voting rolls. Greg, in North Carolina, early on in the day, it was being reported that in about 3 or 4 different, or at least 3 counties and a number of precincts in North Carolina, that there were computer problems and that the computers had old data in them, which right there said to me that the computers were preloaded and that people were being accused of having voted twice. Talk about North Carolina and CrossCheck.
Well, 2 things. I want to mention, you brought up something else. That's actually a variant of CrossCheck. The CrossCheck is about voting in 2 states in the same election. But, excuse me, one of the points I make in the film The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and we do it in cartoon form, is that there's 10 ways to steal your vote. And they use them all, especially in North Carolina. I was on the phone. I spent a lot of time with Reverend Barber, head of the NAACP in Carolina. And we got the whole breakdown. By the way, the NAACP is sued over this and the other, over CrossCheck. Finally, a lawsuit. Unfortunately, it's the first lawsuit against CrossCheck, and it only hit the day after the election. And this is one of the problems we're running into, is that people didn't know what was going on, including North Carolina, where they had taken the state to court, but they didn't realize that CrossCheck was a phony because they didn't want to believe that look, the NAACP does not want to look like it's in favor of people voting twice and people voting fraudulently. So they needed the evidence. I got them the evidence, which is that I got the list. In other words, the state of North Carolina refused to give the NAACP the list of these so-called felon double voters. And I got it. And once they saw the list, they saw that this was basically a very sophisticated Jim Crow tactic. But there are many other tactics, including theft using electronic voting machines. Now, I'm not talking about what a lot of, very frankly, some of my whiter colleagues push, that there's some guy in a cave who's switching your vote from Clinton to Trump. It's usually done in the African-American community by giving them bad machines that just don't work, don't record, or like you say, their names are already in there. They say, oh, you voted twice, including one of the voters who's accused of having already voted is Santita Jackson, the daughter of Reverend Jackson. And she went crazy because she knows her rights and she's ready to stand up and fight. And she knows that if they go arrest an uppity person of color, she has the lawyers and the radio shows to protect herself. But most people don't. They go away, right? And that's one of the problems, is that you end up – that's just one of the things, just the crappy machines that don't work in the African-American communities. We saw this all over, for example, in Sarasota, Florida, in a prior election, where the Republicans won a congressional race by 5,000 votes, even though 29,000 votes just disappeared from the machines. Now, they didn't change their votes electronically. They said, oops, the machines broke down and didn't record. The memory sticks didn't record. Only in the African-American communities. And you just mentioned Raleigh-Durham. You know, that's a city with a nice, bright line, the railroad tracks. On one side is the upscale, rising community of Raleigh. On the wrong side of the track is Black Durham. And where those machines broke down in Carolina was, can you guess which side of the tracks the machines went wrong, or they gave them the bad machines? Can you guess? It was in, the Durham African-American side of the city.
Let me quickly, because
always, every time, by the way, that's how it always works. And here's the statistic. It's not just anecdotal. The U.S. Civil Rights Commission did an analysis. Votes that are lost for technical reasons, like they gave you a bad machine that just didn't record a vote, or it's already loaded and they can't use it, they can't open the polls, your vote was mangled, it couldn't be read, the chance your ballot will be invalidated is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white.
900%.
That's the official government statistic.
900%.
Yes. And what we don't record in America is the millions and millions of votes. What we don't announce, at least on TV when we give the results, we don't announce the votes that aren't counted, that are spoiled, that they claim are uncountable. And as you know, in Florida, there were 179,000 votes that were uncountable, that were cast. 900% more likely that vote was cast by an African American than a white Floridian. This is old. These are sophisticated tactics that are now applied, and so that's why I call it the Ku Klux Klan. This is very sophisticated stuff. It always hits voters of color, again, because of the color of your vote.
Final question to you. Final question. Why is it that Hillary Clinton did not talk about CrossCheck during the election? Why is it that Donna Brazile did not talk about CrossCheck? Why is it that Bill Clinton and President Obama and the rest of the Clinton surrogates didn't utter a mumbling word about this?
Well, two things. I want you to know that the Congressional Black Caucus is up in arms about this. Before the election, Congressman Alcee Hastings, the dean of the Black Caucus, day after his 80th birthday, walked to the Justice Department and put my investigative material from Rolling Stone and the film and everything, and put it in the hands of the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. And he said, now you've got it. Do something. This is before the election. 50,000 Asian American activists signed a petition, investigate, cross-check, and Hastings said, I was a federal judge. I know crime when I see it. This is a criminal conspiracy. I want arrests here. And what happened was the Obama administration and the Clinton campaign made a decision that they assumed that Trump was going to lose, and they didn't want to say that American elections can be rigged. So what they said is, how dare Donald say that the vote could be rigged, because American elections are the envy of the world. American elections are the gold standard of democracy. Even though I can tell you, because I work for BBC and the German channels and the Argentina TV, American voting is the laughingstock of the world. You know, it's a tragic comedy. That's what got Bush in, was by removing black voters. Remember, that story is not very big in the white press or among the white congressional caucus. And so they made a decision that they wanted to say Trump is wrong, so he could have no grounds for complaining about the outcome. They were so sure of themselves. They never thought he could steal enough votes to win it. They never thought he could do that, so they want to take the position, American elections are perfect, so we'll keep quiet about these little problems like CrossCheck and bad machines, etc. And I got to tell you, my co-author, my sometime co-author at Rolling Stone, Bobby Kennedy Jr., the great voting rights lawyer, and he wrote with me. He called up Obama. It's something I can't do because he has Obama's BlackBerry and he knows how to get to him. And in effect, you know what Obama told him? And I can't reveal everything in the conversation because it's private, but it comes down to this. If I talk about vote suppression, it reminds people I'm black. And that's politically dangerous.
Greg Palast, we'll end it there.
Yeah.
That's
see you at gregpalast.com.
gregpalast.com, gregpalast.com. Hey, man, thank you so much. And we'll get you back.
Bye, Doctor.
All right. And, folks, you heard Greg say that Congressman Alcee Hastings took this evidence to Attorney General Loretta Lynch. I'm not going to cast aspersions. I'm not going to impugn anyone's character. But do yourself the service and look up the relationship between Loretta Lynch and Rudy Giuliani. Loretta Lynch and Rudy Giuliani. Loretta Lynch. Did I say Loretta Lynch and Rudy Giuliani? I said, I'm sorry, Loretta Lynch and Rudy Giuliani. Politics makes strange bedfellows. It is 33, and I'm not saying that they're sleeping together. That please, I'm not saying that. They are thicker than thieves. As Amiri Baraka would say, belly button to belly button.